Narayanam namaskritam naram chaiva narottamam devim sarasatim vyasam tito jyotirat. Nastapareshu bhadresu nityam bhagavata sevya bhagavatyutama shoki bhaktir bhavati naistaki. Nigama kalpataru garidam param shukamakaram ritadro samyatam pibata bhagatam rashamariyam mahoraho sivuvi vakaham. Vishnu sadhuma bhagate dhamik vyanihasha karonastadu samisha paranako dunoditaham. Ramapiyadabhishuta vishutam vibhu samapyate yena pidam viduksaram prakyahiduhum horaditadmaram sankesha nirvanam sandinanyataham. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanam Namaste Sarasati Deva Guruvani Vacharine Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Praskita Desana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. As you can see, we're back with the virtual background here. It's not perfect. During the course of our session together, if you see whole sections of my torso or my half of my head or my arms being omitted, it's because we're kind of in a transitional stage where the days are getting longer. There's a little bit more natural light coming in through the window, but it's still far from perfect. But I like the virtual background in spite of its shortcomings. And so we're going to give it a try today and see if I'm going to be visible throughout see if most of me is going to be visible throughout most of the session. And based on this experiment today, we'll see if we continue, bring back the virtual background. We had it throughout all of the summer and the fall, and it's quite nice. In fact, it's not just one virtual background. We've got more than 24 different ones to choose from. So it's kind of fun. Good morning, Ram Kishore. Good morning, Raleigh. Good morning, Jimmy and Taruni. What else have we got here? Good morning, Divya Joshi, Lakshmi Nrsingadas, Haribo, my god brother from down under, almost. Chris Castro, Jean, Gary, thanks very much for joining us. Rakesh, it's always a delight. And then already weighing in with comments, Suprabhat from Ajay Gupta. Good morning, Ajay. Let me give you a like here. No, I'm not going to give you a like. I'm going to give you a love, in fact. Yeah, we don't give likes. We give only loves. Rakesh, Ram Kishore, glorious to Prabhupada, please accept my homage. Suksma. Okay, Suksma. All right. Hey, thank you all. You inspire me. You challenge me. You drive me higher, as I hope I do something reciprocally to you. Second day, we jump from the 8th verse to the 12th verse over the weekend. Rob's asking admission. I think today I'll let him in. It's no harm. We're on speaker view. Good morning, Rob. All right. We're on this verse for the second day in a row, the 12th verse in the 4th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the beautiful story of the absolute truth. Let me read it once more for you, and if you've got it open before you can read along with me. Shivaya lokasya bhavaya bhutaya ya utamashoka parayana janaha jivanti nat martam asho parashrayam mumucho nibija kuto kalebaram. Translation: those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead live only for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So even though the Emperor Parikshit was freed from all attachment to worldly possessions, how could he give up his mortal body, which was shelter for others? This is kind of a glimpse, a sliver of what material life is like. It always ends in disappointment. Even if you're not one of those 1 in 3 marriages that ends in divorce, even if you are perfectly compatible with your partner and you live together for 50 years, don't never have an argument, or maybe you have arguments and that's fine. Doesn't in any way derail your relationship. But inevitably, one is going to leave before the other. You're not going to pass away at exactly the same moment. So the one that's left behind feels some or other that the one who departed first has some or other intentionally cheated them. Why have you left me behind? Like it was their choice or something, you know? Like they got tired of you and they said, that's it, 50 years, I'm calling it quits and transitioning to the next phase, to my next body. There's loss, there's disappointment, there's sorrow, but there's also just a little tinge of like accusation there. Why did you leave me so early? So we see that same mix of emotions coming through this verse here. Maharaj Parikshit was the best of kings. He was the grandson of Arjuna, coming in a line, thousands of years old line of kings who had the pedigree, they had the DNA, they had the RNA, they had not only did they have the aptitude and temperament to be benevolent monarchs, but they also had the familial situation. They also had the domestic support, as we described yesterday. Even as Maharaj Parikshit was a child crawling on the ground, toddling on two legs, awkwardly and unsteadily, all around him was Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. His grand uncles and his grandfathers were always talking and discussing Krishna. Krishna personally would visit them from Dwarka. They would worship Krishna on the family altar, observe the Krishna holidays, chant the Krishna kirtans, eat Krishna prasadam. So in every way, if you are a citizen, it just doesn't get any better than having someone like Maharaj Parikshit as your king. It's the spiritual world come to earth, heaven on earth. As we explained yesterday, it didn't even rain during the day. There was plenty of rain for nice green grass for the cows to eat, agricultural production. 10 times more than was needed was produced with very, very little effort. There were no droughts. There were no pandemics. And although there was plenty of rain, none of it came during the day. It would only rain at night while people were sleeping. Good morning, Prashant. Good morning, Sundari Priya. Good morning, Anjali. Happy Transcendental Tuesday. The seasons were defined. There was a defined spring, defined summer, defined fall, defined winter. Didn't get everything topsy-turvy and mixed up. No citizen, and the word in Sanskrit for citizen is praja. That means any living entity that took birth in that country. That means the ants, that means the birds, it means the fish. What to speak of the most elevated of all animals, the cow and the bull. What to speak of them? No entity had it was tortured and made miserable by any other living entity. Of course, we know the example that when Parikshit came upon the personality of Kali torturing the cow and the bull, he immediately poured out his sword to kill them, exclaiming, Na jatu kuravandranam durdanda parayambate bhutalina padantyar vina ne praninam sujahan. Said, never before in the tens of thousands of years of history of my forefathers having reigned Bhumandala, the earth planet, has ever a cow and a bull suffered because of royal neglect. He said, Anagashu ebhutishu yagaskin marta shi bhujab shakshara marta shapi sanganam. Even if he be Indra, the king of the heavenly planets, should he be caught torturing, causing misery to the mother cow or the father bull, I will cut him down, irrespective of his stature as a demigod. So, if you're a citizen, you feel so happy, secure, joyful, blissfully. There's no scarcity, there's no want. You don't have to storm the capital. You don't have to march in the streets. You have an acre of land, a cow. You have wonderful neighbors. You help each other out with your crops and your construction of houses. You celebrate festivals together. You're side by side with planting, tilling, weeding. You sit down together as an extended family at the table, enjoy jokes and wonderful reciprocation between one another. The happiness which comes from that kind of a God-centered rural lifestyle is so much higher, more sublime than the happiness that's derived from things. Someone said, we're supposed to love people and use things. Would you agree with me that the tendency nowadays in urban society is to love things and use people more? Oh, Maharaj Parikshit was just the perfect king. And don't forget, we're on the cusp of Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga was supposed to come in right when Lord Krishna left. So Kali Yuga was overdue. It was delayed by the length of Maharaj Parikshit's term of reign. And so after when Maharaj Parikshit would no longer be in the breach, when it would be no longer Maharaj Parikshit holding back the intoxication, illicit sex, media, and gambling, which was going to come flooding in Kali Yuga, then the tide would indeed turn. And there's a dramatic change for the worse in the cosmic seasons. So Maharaj Parikshit, through no fault of his own, got cursed to die within 7 days. He gave up his throne, and the citizens are like, how can you do this to me? How can you leave me behind? We had such a good relationship. We loved you. You took care of us like a father. How could you have garland that sage with the snake? How could you have had that lapse? It's unlike you. It's not like you to have done something like that. How could you be leaving us now in the hands of Kali Yuga? Just like the husband whose wife has passed away says, my darling, my love, how could you leave me? We have he's adopted me and none other. He attacks everybody else. He's a blue and gold macaw. Macaws are extremely monogamous. They focus on one particular person, and they're very possessive. Whenever I'm around, Pedro, his name is, will attack anybody else who's in the area. He puts his wings up, opens his jaws, and comes after them. Scares the bejesus out of most people. I've never seen him actually bite anyone, but he certainly puts on a terrifying show. And he expects me to hang with him. I don't have to engage myself fully, but he likes to be in the room with me or going around chewing things at least an hour a day. That's his you can tell his mentality is true. You've got me for a pet, so you have certain obligations to me. You gotta spend at least an hour a day with me. And if I do that, he's perfectly happy and contented. But if I go up to Salt Lake for a couple of days and spend the night, or especially when I traveled before COVID, I was gone for 2 or 3 weeks at a time with the Festival of Colors, I'd come back and he'd be happy to see me and let me pet his head and he'd make purring sounds and all. And then all of a sudden he'd give me a big bite on the finger like, you left me alone for 2 weeks. What kind of an owner are you? What kind of a partner are you? He had that mixed feeling of happy to see me again after 2 weeks. But then, that he had it all worked out. That was 14 hours that I owed him. And he would let me know with a nice brisk nip on the finger. This all underlines the main shortcoming of relationships in the material world, even under the most ideal of circumstances. It says, Mamapetya Purnarjanma Dukala Masashatam Napnavanti Mahatmanam Samsirim Paramam Gatim. It says that this material world has 2 major defects. And try as you might for happiness in this material world, as ideal a relationship as you might have, husband to wife and vice versa, parents to children, grandparents to grandchildren, however sweet and perfect and harmonic those relations may be, even the best of relations suffer from 2 serious shortcomings. One is that it's temporary. You can't hold on to your loved one forever. There's only one place you can do that, and it's not the material world. So if you are for love, if you cast your vote for love rather than hate and distrust and suspicion, and you want to pursue love to its ultimate degree, then you got to get out of this material world. Because love is short-lived. We're torn apart. Examples given sometimes the wind makes these little whirlwinds. I'm sure you've all seen the wind. Not a big like tornado or anything. Little tornado, let's say, mini tornado, chota tornado, will come along a dusty area and it will pick up little twigs and pieces of grass and all, and it will mix them, turn them together, and then it will disperse them. It will throw them. The centrifugal force will just toss them. They were apart. The wind kind of brought them together for a little whirlwind business, and then spit them out again. So material life is like that. We're brought together. We all had our previous karma, our previous incarnations, and something about our choices in our past lives caused a resonance in our consciousness, and we took birth in a certain womb, appeared in a certain family. We had certain brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts and uncles and grandfathers, and we engaged with them for 60 or 70 years, and then we're all dispersed again, perhaps never again to reunite until we get back home, back to God. If you are a lover and not a hater, if you love and not hate, then in order to pursue love to its ultimate degree, you need to go back to the spiritual world where life is eternal. The living beings there have their siddha swarups, their fully evolved spiritual bodies made of sat, chit, ananda, knowledge, bliss, and eternity. And if you love someone there, that love can go on eternally, uninterruptedly. However, it is said Krishna is the cynosure of all attention in the spiritual world. You will not, I'll give you a heads up, what you might expect based on the information that we received from the infallible Vedic scriptures, is that you will not be focused, you'll not be absorbed. Sometimes they use the term head over heels. If you're going to be head over heels for anybody in the spiritual world, it's not going to be your children, it's not going to be your wife, it's not going to be your mom and dad. You'll have love and respect for them insomuch as they are parts of the supreme lovable object who is Sri Krishna. Prabhupada describes Krishna in the spiritual world as the transcendental autocrat. The spiritual world is all about God. The material world is all about you and me. The spiritual world is God-centered. The material world is self-centered. When you transfer to the spiritual world and enable yourself to pursue love without any restrictions or expiration dates, you will find inevitably that your love flows past your wife, past your kids, past your parents, to the lotus feet of the supreme lovable object, Krishna. 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 The name, the appellation, means all attractive. Parasara Muni defined God for us. In the Western countries, we don't refer to God much by name, isn't it? We say, "Our Father art in heaven, hallowed be thy name," but you'll listen in vain for any names of God being shouted out pretty much in the church services by the pastor or in the hymns. There are many chapels and cathedrals and churches which are called the church, the chapel, the cathedral of the holy name. But you'll attend in vain if you're expecting to hear the holy name bouncing off the walls and resonating. We don't use the names of God. Someone says, "Well, what about God? We mention God, we sing God, we talk about God, we talk surrender." It's not a name. It's like man, sometimes hipsters, they say, "Hey man, hey man," Or maybe if you're a lady and you meet some other lady and you should know who they are, but you can't actually remember their name, so you call them, "Oh, it's so nice to see you, darling." Well, that just covers the fact that you don't really know their name. When you talk about God this, God that, that basically says to me you don't really know his name. And how do you have a personal relationship with someone whose name you don't even know? God has names. In the Bible, there are more than 200 names for God. The Muslims have 100 or 200 different names of God they chant. In the Vedic culture of India, good morning, Justin. Yes, God seems so lifeless and generic. That's exactly what it is. It's not a name, it's a title. Like the President of the United States. When we say the President of the United States, a certain amount of information is conveyed. Now, dust devils. Thank you, Sukshma. Those little small Chota whirlwinds are called dust devils. Thank you. I'm getting all this support from Facebook over here. You guys are right on track here. Fantastic. Anjali says, hey man, darling, covers up the fact that you don't really know them. So when I hear all this talk about God, it's well and good. We're acknowledging him as the supreme, as the all-powerful. But, talking about having a personal relationship rings just a little bit hollow when you don't even know his name. God is a title. President of the United States conveys certain information. We know he lives in the White House. He rides around in a limousine with his own driver with a license plate number 1. He has his own private plane. He's commander-in-chief of the armed forces. But in all of that, we still don't know who is that person who lives in the White House, who rides in a limousine, who has his own private plane, who is the commander-in-chief of the armies. Who is that person? God doesn't give that information. Now, if you say Obama, or if you say Trump, or if you say Biden, now we're getting somewhere. So when we refer to God, we are referring not to a name as much as an attribute, an opulence, what we call a bhag. Now, God has 6 bhags, one of which is power. When you say God, you're referring to the opulence of God as being all powerful. But that's not a complete reference. Power is only one of the 6 attributes of God. In India, in our culture, we don't refer to the Supreme as God. Supreme, if you look up in the definition in the dictionary, it is the greatest. So God is not only the greatest in power, which is called Aishwarya, he's also the greatest in knowledge, Shruta. And that's pretty much, we know that. He created everything. He knows everything. He controls everything. Okay, so those 2 opulences we're pretty familiar with. No big revelation there. But here's one that I'll bet you haven't given too much thought to. Beauty. If God is supreme, he's the greatest, and he's not only all-powerful, he's not only all-knowledge, but he's also beautiful. So what's with this old guy on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, lying horizontally as if the act of creation has so exhausted him that he can't even stand up anymore? And he's reaching out to Adam to touch his finger and to imbue some sort of power transferring from God. God looks like he's just about to pass away. He's got white hair, wrinkles. He's lying down, almost as if he was under hospice care. There are all kinds of cherubic little angels sort of holding up and supporting him as if he can't support himself. And it's almost like whatever last tiny vestige of energy God has, he's going to transfer it to Adam, and then he's just going to fade away into nothingness or pass away. What's with that? Prabhupada called that imaginative iconography. We think God knows everything, and our experience is that the wisest people are the oldest. The longer you hang around in this material world, the more you pick up life experiences, the more you read, the more you learn things from various sources. So the young aren't hardly ever described as wise or knowledgeable. It is older people with wrinkles and white hair that are acknowledged as being wise, you see. And also, in terms of power, young people hardly have any money. But when you get older, you generally have savings, you have an IRA, you have a Daisy May, you have discretionary funds. And that's when people go on cruises and visit all around the world. So we equate, in our experience, power and knowledge with age. And that's probably what Michelangelo was thinking when he painted that old guy on the ceiling of Sistine Chapel. However, God is supreme in all categories. That means that if there's anyone more powerful than your candidate is not God. That person is God. If there's anyone more knowledgeable than your candidate is not God. But that's a more eligible candidate for God. But let's take it one step further. If there's anyone more good looking than your God, then your candidate who you put forward is now disqualified in favor of someone who's better looking. That means God is not only the supreme in wealth and knowledge, and power and knowledge, but he's also the best looking. I think the Western country should, as soon as possible, disabuse itself of the misconception of God as being an old guy. It will change the whole game. You go to India, some of the more popular temples there, Tirupati, for instance, on Makara Sankranti, 14th of January, 500,000 people lined up to eventually get 2 seconds in front of the Krishna deity. And it may take 6 or 8 hours. But every time they move forward a step, every time the line move and people in front of them move a little bit forward and they get to take a step, Govinda, Krishna, Hari Hari Bo. Sorry for disappearing there. Anytime I want to sublimate, anytime I want to go into ecstasy, I'll just do like this. Yeah, then I just sublimate. There's so much fervor, so much enthusiasm to worship Krishna as the all-powerful, the all-knowing, and the all-beautiful. Now, how excited can you get about going to the spiritual world and hanging out with an old guy? And we see it in the Western countries because the default image of God is like that old guy. So we're like, yeah, after this body is ripped away from me and after I'm separated from my Cadillac and my 5-bedroom house in Woodland Hills, yeah, I've paid my dues. I've gone to church. I've tithed. I fully expect that I'll get to go to live with God forever. But until that happens, man, I'm going to enjoy my car, my house, my kids, my gun collection, my trucks, and my political party. So you can't help but being too worldly, too attached if the idea of God as an old guy is out there, because it's not attractive. It's not an appealing prospect to spend eternity with some old guy. Imagine being in the spiritual world. People say, keep your voices down. God's taking his afternoon nap. No ice cream today. God's watching his blood pressure. You're going to have to bake the pakoras because God can't take anything that's deep fried. I mean, after all, he's already got wrinkles. He's already got white hair. It's the yellow light. The yellow light's on. What happens after the yellow light? It's the red light. It's the stop sign. God's already exhibiting the symptoms of decrepitude, aging. Time has had its way with God, and he's not much longer for the spiritual world, which is eternal. Now, how did this old guy get in the spiritual world in the first place? Is there something wrong with this picture? Well, let's disabuse ourselves in the Western countries of God as an old guy and start to really enjoy and relish spirituality. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. George Govinda says not only is God old, but he uses a cane. And Shukshma enjoyed my little riff there by saying hysterical description. And Anjali says, yes, the yellow light is the slowdown when you come into an intersection and the light changes from green to yellow. That means you need to slow down and prepare to stop. So when the wrinkles come, when the hair gets gray, when there's aches and pains in your, I have to tell you this. This was my recent yellow light sign. Talk about a yellow light sign to tell me in glaring neon, true, you're not God. You're not God. It might be fun to sort of say, well, you're God, I'm God, God's within you, God's within you, and so we're all God. But that's absolutely ridiculous. We're not God. Here's my own evidence, recent evidence that I'm not God. Last week or so, I started feeling this tenderness in my ribs, almost as if I had a cracked rib. I thought, I haven't had a fall. I didn't slip on any ice or any snow or slide down a hill. I didn't run into anything. I said, where did I get the cracked rib? I just started racking my brain. Why and how has my rib on my right side become so tender? I can't lie on that side at night. When I go down to do any yogic stretchers or anything on the floor, it's the last 6 inches when I'm just kind of using my abdominal muscles. I can't say it's very painful. And I thought, what? And then I thought, could it have been from sneezing? Could I have cracked a rib from sneezing? So I Googled it, and sure enough, it's very common for people who are 74 years old to crack a rib from sneezing. Like, how many pleasures do you have left in life at this age? Preaching is always, will always be my highest transcendental, divine treasure, enjoyment. Another one on not such a high level, but I enjoy every day having fresh squeezed juice, carrots, a lot of ginger, lemon, some of those little oranges which aren't too expensive, pineapple. Pineapples are like $2 each. But whatever is least expensive, every day. We have like 3 champion juicers, just in case one fails. There's always plan B and plan C. So I enjoy that. And one of the few things that are left to me to enjoy in my old age, in my non-godlike old age, are a good sneeze. In fact, I often have a series of them. And when I feel a sneeze coming on, I expand my lungs, I open my rib cage, and I really let her rip. And oftentimes it'll be a series of 4 or 5. And that's one of the few pleasures I have left at the age of 74. But now that's taken away. I'm afraid now to take a deep breath as a prelude to a sneeze, because I think actually a sneeze caught me unawares a couple days ago, and now my rib's even more sore. So anyway, what do they say? Old age is not for sissies, and old age is not for God, folks. Please, hello, let's wake up. So God refers to one of the 6 attributes of the supreme power. Parent, some of you are parents. Jayashree says, the Christians want Christ without God. They don't know who he is. Otherwise, Jesus would have revealed. He could have very easily revealed the personality of Godhead, but he felt they weren't ready for it. Now, someone who in the Bible did reveal something about the beauty and who even mentioned the long, flowing black hair of God was David, or David, as they referred to him. And David used to do exactly what we do. He would play his lute, various musical instruments, he would compose songs, and he would glorify the name of God. No one was more dear, no name of any devotee throughout the entire Bible is mentioned more than David. He was truly a man after God's heart. Jayashree says she saw in a Facebook video that one 123-year-old man in India was doing yoga. The first words out of his mouth was that he is God and we are all God. And that's what all of his yoga poses must have taught him, misleading him. So Guru Krishna Das says, true, you crack me up. I crack me up, Guru Krishna Das. All my life I've sneezed. I've developed the art of the sneeze to a high level. When I sneeze, it's so explosive and so purifying and cauterizing that people anywhere in the room, anywhere in the building, jump out of their seats, at the explosiveness of my sneezes. And now old age has taken all that away from me. I have to sneeze, be very careful now, to sneeze very delicately. All right. We don't refer to the Supreme as God because that's limiting him and that's depersonalizing him. He is Bhagavan. Bhagavad Gita means the song of God. Bhagavan, Bhag means possessor and Bhag means opulence. So to understand God in full, you have to understand additional opulences. Of course, omniscient, of course, omnipotent, but by necessarily all beauty. And once you come to realize that God could never be controlled by time, nor does he have a material body, then you come to the ecstatic realization that God is young, he's funny, he's the best looking, he cuts jokes, he knows how to dance. He satisfies and reciprocates with each and every one of us to our full satisfaction. And it's not that because God is one, the millions and millions of trillions of liberated souls in the spiritual world get to see him like once every 100 years for 2 seconds like a Tirupati. An aspect of his omnipotency is that he can expand himself. So the fact is that each and every person or group of people in the liberated spiritual world have God in their circle. Each and every one of them thinks that God is with me or with us exclusively. So there's none of that. God doesn't suffer from any limitations in terms of time and place and space. So, well, let me finish my point here, True. You're just going around and around. All powerful, omniscient, all beautiful, all wealthy, because he created all the planets, all the jewels, all famous. Everybody's heard about God. Even the atheist, there is no God. I don't believe in God. God doesn't exist. He just said God 3 times. So drawing his attention, our attention to God. And then finally, humility. Although God has all these other opulences in full, there's no one who has more of a right to be swell-headed, to be taken with themselves, to brag, to expect others to defer before him. He is the supreme in 6 major categories. And yet, though no one has more right to claim, worship, adoration, praise God, as he is more wealthy, more knowledgeable, more beautiful, more famous, and more well-known than any other living, he is also more humble. There's no one more humble. As I mentioned before, in the Mahabharata, when all the guests came to Yudhishthira's Rajasuya sacrifice, the classic exhibition of Krishna's humility is that Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who had descended on earth 5,000 years ago as the friend and associate of the Pandavas, personally took the job of washing the feet of all the incoming guests. We hear a lot of stories from the Bible and various scriptures. When travelers would come from a long distance, it was customary to wash their feet because your extremities get overheated when you're walking in a hot, arid desert climate. So one of the nicest things you can do to receive a guest as a host is to wash their feet. Put their feet in some nice cooling water, give them something to drink, and wash their feet. There's nothing more refreshing for a traveler. And we read about Christ getting his feet washed and all kinds of various personalities getting their feet washed. But Krishna, the most worshipable person, the most opulent person, the most attractive person, the wealthiest, the best looking, opted to personally himself get down at ground level and wash the feet of all the incoming guests. And some of these guests were demons like Jarasandha, Sisupal. Later on, Krishna would purge the earth from their evil, tyrannical influence. And yet, earlier on, it did not stop Krishna from taking the humble position and washing the feet of all his guests. Samaham sarvabhutishu name dvesha stinapriyaha ye bhajanti tu mam bhakta mai teshu teshu aham. God is the creator of all living beings, is equal to everyone. He loves all of his children, equally not only human beings, but animals, birds, reptiles, fish. Not only the human beings are pious and righteous, he also loves the ones that have gotten off track, like Duryodhana, Sisupal, and the aforementioned demons. He doesn't love the miscreants less than he loves the devotees. He loves them equal, but because of our behavior, God interfaces with us accordingly. Take a father who has two sons. One is always in trouble. He's always disobeying the father, disrespecting the father. So the father is obliged to express his love for that son by sometimes raising his voice, sometimes disciplining him, sometimes grounding him in his room, sometimes maybe slapping him in the wrist. So it would appear like the father doesn't like the son, but that's not true. He loves the son, but he thinks he needs to administer some tough love now so that the son doesn't get in trouble. He can't be too permissive. He can't seem to endorse the rebellious attitude of the son now, because then it will just get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Prabhupada told the story one time of a young man. He had been raised by his aunt, and he was in jail for murder, scheduled to be executed. So the auntie came to visit him, and he said, "Auntie, I want to tell you some final words." And he said, "Can you lean a little closer?" She leaned close. He said, "Can you lean a little closer, Auntie?" Finally, she got her ear between the bar, and he savagely bit her ear. She said, "What did I do to deserve that? I gave you everything you wanted. I raised you. I didn't withhold anything from you." And the young man who was sentenced to murder for his crime said, "Yes, Auntie, but maybe if you'd been a little more strict, I wouldn't be where I am today." He loved Duryodhana as much as he loved Arjuna, but because of his misbehavior, Krishna had to show his love in a different way. Now, on the other hand, that father has two sons. The son who is in sync with the father, who wants the same things as the father, who is one in purpose with the father, that son, the father sits on his lap. He speaks to him in very soft, murmuring, pleasing sounds. He strokes his head. Father doesn't love one more than the other, but he interfaces with them differently. So in the end, the definition and the way that we see God is Aishwarya Shamagasha Viryasha Yasha Jnanam Vairagyasa Samvagamitingana. Prashant is already ahead of me. He's already given the Vanapedia quotes for that those 6 opulences. So Bhagavan can be loosely translated, Bhagavad Gita can be loosely translated as a song of God, and strictly or literally translated as the song of the possessor of all opulences. So because of this complete and personal vision of God, which we inherit through the line of disciplic succession, the chain of realized souls, beginning with God himself, who spoke, explained himself to Brahma, who then passed the knowledge to Narada, who passed it to Vyasa, comes down to us through the unbroken chain of disciplic succession. And each and every one of the links in that chain is a consummate lover of God, transmitting not just a body of knowledge, which can be sterile and tasteless, but transmitting knowledge with a love of God. Love. You may be speaking so many things about another person, but if it's not a person for whom you have love, it's very dry and analytical and not particularly attractive. It's just a list of facts. But if you're speaking about someone for whom you have love, you can transmit the same facts. They're so tall. This is their hair color. This is their eye color. This is their weight. This is their talent. This is their ability. This is what they do. This is how they move. This is what makes them tick. If you have love, then not only do you get the factual information, but you're also infected with the same love that the beloved feels for the object of their love. So the benefit of coming in the descending chain of succession is that not only do you get knowledge, but you get love. That's why our spiritual master, whom we affectionately called as Prabhupada, his formal title in sannyas order of life was Bhakti Vedanta. Vedanta means knowledge, but bhakti means love. And in the devotee, you find the ideal combination. Because knowledge is dry, tasteless, doesn't give you any juice. On the other hand, sentimental love can lead to zealousness, fanaticism, off base. But when you have bhakti vedanta, you have love tempered by knowledge, and you have knowledge infused with love. You have the perfect, balanced, relishable outlook from which you can mature and evolve and enrich and thicken progressively. Those sadhusam tudo bhajana kri tuto narta navita shata shakti tatabi mayobana sadakana mayor prade pradurvave bhavetkanam. From thin to thick, you can progress to attachment to Baba and ultimately pure love of God under the guidance of the bona fide gurus coming to you in the disciplic succession. Om Tat Sat. I hope you've enjoyed this session as much as I have. Didn't follow the script at all. In fact, didn't share a single note with you. Just got off on a stream of consciousness, but it was fun. I enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. Thanks for joining us, Rob, on Zoom. Sorry I didn't let you in yesterday because most people joined through Facebook Live. Haribo, thank you, Rob. Most people join through Facebook Live, but you're fine. If you want to come in this way, I'll let you in every day, no problem. Did you notice the new Wisdom of the Sages podcast where Raghunath is in Cali, Colombia now? I didn't know how they would be able to pull that off, what time zone he's on, what kind of internet connection he might have had, but it seems to be going on. And I haven't listened to it, but I'm looking forward to hearing their interview with Janavi Harrison, one of the foremost Kirtanyas in the world today. All right, thanks for joining me in Zoom, Rob, on Facebook Live. Jayasri Radha, Maitreya. Ask the question. I will answer that question as soon as I get off here. Thank you for pouring. Raghava, thank you. I can only see 4 comments at a time, and they're coming in fast and furious, so they're scrolling out of my vision as fast as they're coming. Nectar, sound. Jayasri Radha says sound, question mark. Why is the volume not enough? Got the microphone right here close to me. All right, maybe you could elaborate on that cryptic comment, Jayasri Radhe. It's just sound, question mark. Otherwise, thank you for being with us. Thank you for giving a like. We've still got a few moments in the show left, so if you want to hit a like button or a share button, you can always do that. It'll help increase our exposure throughout Facebook in general. Rakesh, thank you. Jimmy and Taruni, always a pleasure. Bye, Bobby, my better half for the last 50 years. Jaya Shri, with all of your wonderful contributory marks, some of which are mystical. Justin Sorensen, Govinda, Dave, Anjali, good morning. Transcendental Tuesday, Radhe Sham, Guru Krishnadas, I'm glad I cracked you up. Omkar from Salt Lake City Temple, Sundari Priya from Salt Lake City Temple, Deva Brata Kumar, thank you for joining us. Gary, been regular recently. Joy to have you with us, Gary. Ram Kishore Das, check out Ram Kishore's Facebook page. He always has mouth-watering pictures of his prasadam there. Raleigh, from right here in Spanish Fork, thank you. He's getting all of our books in order. It's about time we had a qualified CPA pulling everything together through QuickBooks. Thank you, Raleigh. Dibya Joshi, Lakshmi Nishringa, Prabhupada disciple, my godbrother from Puerto Rico. His wife is looking to finish her residency. Ram Rasvilas is networking here in Salt Lake City to see if that might be an option. Chris and Nicole, wonderful volunteers. Chris is coming up on his 1-year anniversary as a volunteer on the 28th, this coming Thursday. Claudia Thompson, thank you. Suze, thanks for your quotes and your contributions. Maitreya Das and Jean Eskelson. So you're welcome to add a comment. You're welcome to like, share, all of that. And you're also welcome to conclude Transcendental Tuesday by offering pranams. The divine within me salutes the divine within you. The spark of the Paramatma, the super soul in my heart, acknowledges and honors the super soul in your heart by saying, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And let's just see if I can finish this program in a magical, mystical way by seeing if I can just disappear altogether. No? Oh, it's because the sun has risen. So I'm not able to fade off into the background. We'll see you tomorrow for Wisdom Wednesday.